in climate change? It's just a matter of where does this come from? Is it from nature or is it from man? So throughout my life, I've been involved in agriculture. I grew up on a farm, and then I went away to school and did my master's degree in agriculture. I've worked in business for over 30 years. And about 20 years ago, I had a speaker come to one of our producer meetings. His name was Tim Ball, and he is a climatologist, and he brought out to us that this climate change is not this narrow 30 or 40 years in the past history of the world, but climate change is over a long expanse of centuries that we should be looking at. And through this, he showed us that there's many ups and downs of climate change throughout history. Now, I want to just take a moment and show you a couple of slides to illustrate this. So if you'll be patient with me, I'm just going to pull this up. As long as Tammy has this all set for me, we'll see what happens here. So this is a chart I want to show you. And if you look at the bottom here, this has Tim Ball's version of climate change. So if we go back 1,000 years, you can see in the early thousands to 1200, there was quite a spike in temperature. Now you might say quite a spike, but that's the average temperature on the earth was 9.2 degrees Celsius. It went up to 9.8. Then in the 14 to 1600s, there was those lower periods of climate. And again, it only went down 2 or 3 degrees. And then you can see at the end there, it kind of spiked up a bit in the last 30 or 40 years. So what he's telling us is that this climate change has been happening over the decades. Now, if you look at the top chart, this is by Michael Mann. He's a PhD out of Penn State. He delivered this to the UN about 40 years ago and said, look at this. It's very calm. The climate hasn't changed till the last 30 or 40 years. And look at the hockey puck stick going up there. So that's what they based this whole climate change was this graph. These two have gone to court together in BC, the Supreme Court, and Tim Ball won the case, and his numbers were stated to be correct. Now we hear a lot about carbon. So with carbon, we often think of it, this is an illustration from NASA, and it's showing here that carbon is very dense in the northern part of the hemisphere. You can see it in the red and the yellow there. And in the bottom part, where you got South America, Africa, it's in the blue. So that's a lower carbon content. So it depends what time of year it is and where they take the carbon content. This is in April 2006. So if you look here in July of 2006, it's all blue. So what's happened? Well, imagine that. These plants are growing in northern hemisphere. They're taking carbon dioxide. So plants need carbon dioxide. So without it, plants would not survive. We couldn't eat. Now let's look at this. If we increase carbon dioxide with plants, look at what happens. The average part per million on the left is where we are now. So if we increase it, we're going to go to these bigger plants. So again, carbon dioxide can be good. I'm just going to go out of this now. So give me one moment. Back here. So let's think about the United Nations. They came out about 1960s, said, we've got this climate change. We're going to have these accords, the Kyoto Accord. Now we have the Paris Accord, because 90% of climate change is caused by humans. And then they teach this in the schools. They teach this in universities. And we believe it. In this accord, China doesn't have to do anything till 2030, and India can't afford to do anything. So the Western world is doing all these things with windmills, with cars, with solar electricity, but it's not economical feasible because they have to pay subsidies to people to use these. Now, if you looked at your gas bill lately, there's something on there called a carbon tax. My last bill was $25 for 1 month. That's going to go up sixfold by the year 2030. I don't want to pay $150 a month. What about our farmers? What about industries? Can they afford this and still survive in the world environment? So the next time you look outside in the winter and it's kind of warm, then you go to the summer, it's very hot. We got tornadoes, we got hurricanes, we got winds. Think to yourself, there is no question that climate change is happening. The only argument point is what part is humans like us and what part is nature. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.